episode is sponsored by Raise Tech, end-to-end IT solutions for your business growth.
Hello, everyone. This is On the Agile Couch, fourth season, gaining its speed. And I'm very glad today to introduce Heidi on the Agile Couch, having a talk with me. Thank you very much for joining, because Heidi is an author of really, I would say, famous book, Dynamic Reteaming. I believe I've heard a lot of people read it, at least, so that makes it famous, at least in my bubble, you can say.
Thank you.
So this is the topic we're going to be talking about primarily. So
Excellent.
hi, how are you?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks so much for having me here.
Did I forget anything when by introducing you? Anything you would like?
We'll also give props and thanks to Artium. So I work for Artium. We build custom software for a variety of different companies.
Yes.
And yeah, based in Santa Monica is where the office is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm from the Los Angeles area as well. So it's great to be in Vilnius.
Yes. Do you come often in Europe, in this region, Eastern Europe somewhere, or?
Well, it's my second time in Vilnius, and yeah, I travel around the world and love visiting different countries, meeting different people. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very nice to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
All right. So reteaming, right?
Yeah.
That is a hot topic, I would say, lately. At least you can hear it in the conferences. You know, someone talking about mentioning it at least. Why it's getting so important lately? Why do you see the importance of reteaming is growing? Because I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in all of the agile communities, we were saying stable teams. That's what we need to have, right? What's changing?
Well, it's an interesting question because I remember years ago, the whole, we want to create teams, keep them together, forming, storming, norming, performing. Yes. And, that's the goal. Let's gel the teams, gel the people, and out comes the high performance. And I remember that kind of information. I remember a lot of the research on teams and books. Also, it would be nice, I think, if teams could be stable. It sounds highly convenient. My experience in the, software industry for 20 years has been the opposite of that. I've been at a series of different startups that grew bigger and had a variety of different changes, from growing, people leaving, people switching, in a variety of different configurations.
Yeah.
So I was like, seems like counter to the experience that I had. So I became just very curious about that and somehow driven and obsessed with trying to prove the point that it's natural that our teams will change.
Yeah. So basically, you can say the environment affects us to change a lot, right? There's a lot of things happening, as you mentioned, growing, merging, scaling, and so on. Surroundings makes us sort of a push to the change, right? And
yeah, I think sometimes, the environment, sometimes we're forced to change. Other times maybe it comes from within and we desire to do something different or work with different people or work at a different company, so then we initiate the change. So I think there's some different ways that the change can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what is important then when we have this reteaming process? What basically is the most key things to go through and remember, not to forget, maybe whenever. First of all, probably to notice that we're in the reteaming process, to understand that. But then what goes then?
Yeah, and with the noticing, it's sort of like, so many of us that work in software companies, we're delivering products, we're trying to delight our customers, we're doing that work, but then there's an additional layer of team and organizational change happening. So I agree, it's like, first it's sort of like acknowledging the reality that we do have some challenges and some opportunities. Sometimes it's easy when our teams change. Sometimes it's challenging. I think there's different ways to look at it, but we have to deliver and we have to meet our commitments and we have to delight the customers. We got to sell, we got to get the business in for our companies. We have to help our companies succeed, but then we have this layer of change. So I think one important thing is acknowledging and pointing it out. Another important thing is that, we are humans and we have different reactions and different opinions and thoughts about change.
Yeah.
For some of us, it could be easy, and for some of us, it could be difficult. And so having that empathy to the change experience is very important.
We talk about change, right? But reteaming, what is special about this change, right? Does it follow just a natural, change that we sort of change patterns, or change management practice, whatever we do with any kinds of changes that could appear in the companies, right? But talking about teams and reteaming, what is special about this change?
I think what is special is that with reteaming, we are talking about, and dynamic reteaming, we are talking about team change. So it's a different kind of change involving people that work together with a shared goal. They are thought partners, and the actions and the energy that they put into their shared goal, it's a collaboration. So the team system is a collection of people that work together and they form this sort of team entity. And there are different people that come together on the team and it feels different. We have this team entity or team dynamic. A lot of this thinking is from organizational relationships systems coaching, which is a lot of words together, ORSC. So you have these people coming together and they form this sort of entity. And so when the entity changes, even at the edges, someone joins the team is different. There are new possibilities. Maybe the person that joins, they bring a different perspective than was present on the team before. Maybe when someone leaves this team entity, things are lost. Not only the uniqueness of that person and what they brought to the team, maybe they did their job in a different way than other people. And so then when they leave, the team feels like it's not the same as it was before. And so all of this space I think is very interesting because you don't know what you're going to get. You join a team, maybe you meet some of the people when you're interviewing, or maybe not. And you're with these people and you're working on this, your thought partners working on joint creation.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. And then when it changes, we could be happy about the change or we could be very sad about it or something else. So I find that it's, with reteaming, with dynamic reteaming, it's like it's all in this space of team change, and that makes it unique from other kinds of changes, like suddenly your work is organized in a different tool, or maybe
strategy.
or new strategy or priority change, or some other sort of change. So there's distinguishing factors. I think there's also some common factors, right? Like, and you can look at different change models. For example, one of the ones that I really like to look at is really about transitions. William Bridges wrote a book called Transition, amongst other books. Talks about an ending, a neutral zone, or kind of a liminal phase, and then a new beginning. You could view things like that. You could view other change curves. Sometimes people are influenced by, like, Virginia Satir change model. You have a change, maybe the addition of a foreign element. You have a dip and then people get used to the change or the new normal after the fact. There are some, like, you can adopt some of these different models of change to make sense of reteaming. And I like to do that. I think these lenses are interesting to explore.
Yeah.
So there's differences and then there's similarities with other types of change.
Is it that with the reteaming, a change, within the team environment, it's also because, well, for a lot of us, this is closest to what we have in the company, our team, right? Strategy change could be something far away, to something,
Yeah.
not always sort of relate to it so directly as you would, because these are the people you're working with basically daily, and this is sort of a closest to family that you've got, right? And if that
Yeah.
changes, it's just so close to us. That's
Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, there's a notion of distance
yeah,
with reteaming. So when you experience a change in your immediate team, it's right there.
yeah,
It impacts every hour, maybe, of the day,
exactly.
even like a smaller unit than a day. And then sometimes we might notice changes that happen on another team or something in a different location. And there's this sense of abstraction. And right. And
Yeah,
so you might not know the names of the people that
yeah.
were impacted by a change, like way over there. But if the change happens on your immediate team or the one close to you, maybe you feel it differently. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm bringing. Exactly. That's what I
yeah,
think. That's why it's so
yeah,
important, because it is, the closest people you work with, and you usually you put trust in those people. You learn them, those people, how to work with
yeah,
them, their sort of traits of personalities, even, and all kinds of things that's around that. How to go and ask you, even learn to read their emotions, whether someone's having a
yeah,
hard day or a good day, right? It's just by being
yeah,
close, right? And when that changes, you need to suddenly learn so much new things about the new person or new people if they're
yeah. And
several, right?
I think also, like, adding on to this idea, leaders making decisions about changes that impact people or teams that are far away from them,
Yeah.
I think need to consider the human impact of reteaming.
Absolutely.
When people are leaving, people are joining, or any kind of change to teams merging together, a team splitting, whatever, that it's a big responsibility as a leader or a decision maker involved in reteaming to come from a human aspect. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I give to leaders is, number one, you need to have patience with people. If you're planning a change on a team way over there, you're probably talking about it for a long time. And so you need to consider the effect. Do people have a chance to kind of get acclimated to the change? And then you have to bring a human aspect to the situation. I think it can be a very big change for leaders. Reteaming by abstraction is very risky. I think it's challenging. And so it's kind of like, how do you cultivate your community of leaders in your company and enable different types of local decision making
Yeah.
on how teams are organized? And yeah, I think it's a definitely an interesting space. And how can you create opportunities for people to have ownership over how they work? And I don't think it has to be the same for everyone. I
Yeah.
think, cultivating leaders in different parts of the company that enable decision making that's best for the people in these locations is important. I don't have all the answers for how to do this,
Yeah.
but I think it's a real interesting space.
It is. Actually, I had a question whether you have any advices, right, to the leaders. We're talking about leadership now. what they need to know when if they are the ones facilitating the change or reteaming, right? Or it comes from some decisions of let's say upper management, right? It's not like a natural process in the team, but something that was brought to the team because of some organizational changes or whatever that could be there. So being aware that people are individuals and they need to sort of take time and at least take time, right? What else is that important that the leaders need to do in order to ease up the reteaming process?
Yeah, I think including people in the decision making is really important, because the leader can't make the decisions without understanding the different contexts. So how do you build a closeness and an understanding of what's happening in different parts of the company is one of the challenges and opportunities as well. So you need to involve people in the decision making, at least by giving input. You might make the decision as a leader, but how do you get the sentiment of the people and the leaders that are on the ground? I think it's very important to try to involve people in the you want people to own the decisions that happen or the changes that happen. So cultivating a sense of ownership through getting input, giving opinions, inclusion is important. You're going to find that some leaders are going to make decisions, and it's going to be, and they're not going to want to get input. You're going to find Sam Kainer in his book, Facilitator's Guide to Participatory Decision Making, has a few images that I like to refer to. Because some of them is like, the leader is going to make the decision and everyone just has to go along with it. That's a certain class of changes that might happen. And another type is where the leader will make the decision, but they get input from the people. And then the third type is when the people just make the decision and kind of maybe self-organize the space of retrospectives and other things. I think you're going to have different types of decision making. And, as people in the teams and also as the leaders and managers, we can expect these different types of changes. And number one is like, how can we be human together and considerate of each other regardless of the type of change or the type of decision making?
Yes.
Fostering communication so people can make sense of change is important. Like Bridges in his book Transitions talks about, if you have an ending, a neutral zone, and a new beginning, talking about the ending is really important. So fostering some sort of dialogue. You can have one-on-one discussions. People can discuss things as teams. You can have open forums. Leaders have a very important responsibility for cultivating dialogue. And it's a challenge.
Should we accept that sometimes reteaming sort of didn't go successfully? I don't know. Person decided to leave. He or she simply didn't match with the peers, new peers, or a group, or and so on. Should we sort of, in this case, should we try to make this person fit? Should we do something about it, or should we actually just let it go?
I would say sometimes you need to let it go. I think you're not going to want all the reteaming that happens. It's not like, let's all change tomorrow, break up the teams. That's not what this is about. It's a natural process. People are going to join, people are going to leave for a variety of reasons. Sometimes you're going to like the reason, sometimes not. People might just decide to go. Some people might want to join. For some reason you don't hire them. It can be challenging to get hired at a place sometimes. I think you're gonna what we will notice is that it's all these things. It's I think a natural phenomena that people join, people leave, this stuff changes. It just does. Good or bad. You can judge it, I guess, or you can just, it's kind of like the change of seasons, the weather, it's
inevitable.
natural.
Right.
It's a thing.
But then the question is, should we encourage even sometimes reteaming? Should we, I don't know, some companies have practices that every now and then they switch something just because to sort of put more, I don't know, energy back to the company, get out of the box thinking and all of those kind of things. You can hear those, sort of, but should we do that intentionally or leave it just for a natural, change as you mentioned, or even try to prevent that? What would you say?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think there's different cases, right? So maybe you have a startup and you have this goal of building this company and it's a small number of people and you have an intentional goal to grow. You raise some money. And so it's almost like greenfield software development. You're just starting, you're growing the company, the people, the products. Sometimes you're going to catalyze something new. So that's at like the company level. At the individual level, sometimes people want to change, and so they catalyze it in themselves. Maybe they get some coaching and they get the courage to make a change or to try something new, or maybe it's easy for them, right? So you might have that. You might have a case with a company that's been together for a while. So it's not really, and they have existing ways of working. It's not really like the greenfield situation where they're catalyzing a new company, but the company's been around for a while, and maybe people feel like or someone gets the idea that we have these problems in the existing system and we want to work differently or do something differently. We need a transformation of some sort. And so to solve these problems, the answer is some kind of change. So you might find that. You catalyze the change either from nothing to something. You have something that exists. You want it to be different. You try to get that to happen. You try to get people to go along with the change, kind of like the change management scenario, which is interesting to some. In other cases, maybe the company's not doing so well and it needs to fold and it needs to go away, and it's not exactly the happy case, but it dissolves and it goes away, and it's maybe you want it to survive, but no one's buying your product and it's kind of fading out. I think you can experience all these different cases. It's usually, I think reteaming happens to solve a problem. Like, what is the reason why you would do this? Some companies, there's some stories in my book from like Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor, Michigan is a good example of a company that and Richard Sheridan writes about this in his book, Joy Inc. It's a really great book. He talks about how they pair program and they switch pairs deliberately for sharing information, for building resilience. And when you apply to join the company, you experience what this pairing is like, you see what you're getting yourself into, and it's part of the culture of the company that they've built, that they pair and they share and spread information. And so there's parity with the hiring and the experience working in the company. And I know from interviewing Richard and from reading his writing and hearing him speak in previous companies that he was a part of, one of the problems that he encountered as a vice president or senior vice president, whatever the title was, is that people would work alone and they'd develop these towers of knowledge, and it was hard to go on vacation, or they'd want to leave the company, and then you as a leader are stuck with a situation where no one understands the system. And it's like a brittle kind of case. So when he and his co-founder were forming Menlo, they deliberately wanted to build a way of working that would enable sort of more, I guess, resilience is the word that comes to mind. I know there are sticklers in how you define resilience, but there's, how can we create a company culture where the information is retained, where people can go on vacation because multiple people know the system and other things like that. So you'll find that there's many different ways to run a company. I've been a part of like 2 startups that grew bigger and went public. In the second startup, we switched pairs. These are a lot of the practices that we help companies with at Artium, where I work.
Mm-hmm.
Building the company, building the capabilities, building the products, pair programming, switching pairs, so we can have this resilient org resulting where people share information, they learn together, they deliver products with higher quality, because if you're pairing, the quality it's more quality assurance than quality control, all this stuff. But there's a lot of variety in reteaming. There's, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, what are you trying to do by having a reteaming? There are other options besides changing teams to solve different problems. So reteaming is an option. And it's also something that you need to deal with because it's just going to happen.
Yeah, one way or another.
One way or another.
With your control or without it, basically.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is also that if we foster in the company the culture of constant change, maybe to some degree, not like a huge changes, but if we do like those kind of pairs or more, just have more dynamics in the organization, the reteaming will be easier. It will be more natural to the people. Would that be a correct assumption?
It could be that if you've cultivated a community where change happens all the time, people know it when they join, that yes, it's what they can expect. You always have the new leader effect. If you have a new leader come in, and maybe the new leader is trying to do something different, it could change everything. It could destroy what you've had. But what I wanted to say is that the other space is about how do we evoke the change, right? We are at an open space event, which is a very cool, liberating structure, and you can do it inside companies. For example, when I was at one company, the third startup that I was a part of, we had about 350 people, and we did an open space event. And so, what that means is just like we're experiencing here at a community event, the people come together, and in this particular company, the people were given a challenge to improve how they collaborate across different types of teams that they had, and they had about 50 teams. And so what happened was the people that worked in the teams served up a lot of different potential solutions to how can we improve our collaboration across the teams. And they built a conference schedule for a day where they had sessions to address the challenge. And then the people that were interested in maybe one of the solutions proposed would go to talk and have a discussion. And then they came up with action items that were followed up on after the open space. So you can kind of bring challenges to your teams or your communities of teams, encourage people to offer their insight on how to solve the challenges, authorize them and give them time in their schedule to work on some solutions after the event. And it can be a way of trying to stimulate or evoke change. So another thing is our teams work day to day. They follow a rhythm and a pattern. So I think it's very helpful from time to time, ideally quarterly, to come together and break the pattern of how people are working together, to break the rhythm. For example, having a hack day where people can come and you have an event. Maybe it starts 2:00 Thursday to 2:00 Friday. Everybody goes home to sleep. This is not sleep at the office. But people can work and build anything in pairs or in groups. And then maybe they're new product ideas. Maybe they're fixing some issues they never have a chance to fix. Maybe they're building or cooking something together. You can have wild sorts of freedom with these special innovation events. And it adds a jolt of something different for people. We go through day to day. Sometimes we'll take time off, we'll go on vacation, we'll come back, and it feels different. And so I think we get into routines at work, having some planned events to break up the usual cycle can stimulate some new creativity or freshness.
But breaking the cycle just sort of for that moment, as you mentioned, you have a hackathon and then going back to your regular rhythm, or breaking the rhythm itself. I mean, changing the way you usually operate could be, I don't know, a wild example. You've done sprints of 2 weeks long. Now we do, I don't know, flow-based, way of working or whatever, things like that. Sort of a,
Yeah, so what I'm suggesting is we have the way we work, and then in the middle of it, we have a short-term event of some
sort of a
kind that
shock.
breaks the rhythm. Yeah, like a shock.
Yeah.
But people are invited to come. It's not scary.
Yeah.
It's just this, well, your mileage may vary, but it's just this event designed for us to work differently, do something different, and then we go back. And in the other case, you're going along and suddenly you do everything differently. That's a bit jarring. That's not something that I would recommend.
Yeah.
It maybe the people in it, again, those kind of, like, they call them like big bang changes or transformations, that they're slow, even though they sound like they're some big thing. Like that, I'm not into that. Yeah, I'm not into that. I'm more like, we're going about our day to day. We have commitments, we have deadlines, we have things that we've agreed to. We still have to do that, but how can we have a change of scenery? I was at a company, and every year we would go on a tech retreat. And so we would go out in nature, we'd go camping, we'd go whitewater rafting. Every year we would do something different. And it was to build camaraderie and to have a break and to celebrate accomplishments. We'd go to Disneyland. We were near Disneyland, so we'd have a group. They still go to Disneyland at this company because you can take hundreds of people to Disneyland. It scales more than like camping. But just to do something to kind of break up the energy, I think can renew us a bit. It's kind of like that eco cycle. Yeah, so it doesn't have to like permanently change everything forever from there. That's a bit, sometimes there's gradations, like could be a little bit too intense. But sometimes that happens, right? Like, I don't like the trend of that we've seen in the last couple years of suddenly a bunch of people are laid off. That feels like that big jarring event. And then, yes, it will be different after. There's a lot of pain and suffering in that. I don't really enjoy that. I don't like that. I don't think many people do.
Probably no one does.
I don't think anybody does. Like, if they do, they got a problem. But so.
Okay. So basically to summarize, right? Dynamic reteaming, what would be the biggest benefits of dynamic reteaming, actually? What would you state is the key?
Well, if we're talking about dynamic reteaming, I mean, we've been talking about a wide variety of team changes. Dynamic reteaming is a book that I wrote based on my experience and the experience interviewing lots of different people around the world, in which I derived 5 base patterns for how teams change. One by one, someone joins a team, someone leaves a team. Grow and split, a team grows bigger and it splits in 2 or 3. Merging, 2 or more teams come together. Isolation, you form a team off to the side, maybe to catalyze new product development. You give that team process freedom, they go from there. Switching is when people switch from team to team. This book is a descriptive account of how team change happens, to prove the point that team change is inevitable. It's going to happen in these different ways. Sometimes you're going to like it, sometimes you're not going to like it. There's stories of positivity and love, there's stories of loss. It's like that. So the benefits of that, I think, awareness of the reality that you join a team, it's not going to last forever. Enjoy what you have is an important message of it. This is not, people get, I think, misinterpret dynamic reteaming to think this is a process I need to install and bring at my company. And it's really not that. It's more like it's already there. Yesterday we had what do we have, 200 people here? And I asked people, write down a story of when your teams have changed in the past. And they wrote it down on an index card. Then I presented the 5 patterns, and then I said, okay, look at your story, flip your card, write down the pattern that you experienced. So they did that, and I said, okay, find the other people that experienced the pattern. We formed these 5 groups of people, just because it's like, it's just a natural occurrence.
Yeah,
It's
everyone
just
had
this
it.
thing.
Mhm.
Everybody had it,
Mhm.
and all 5 patterns are present.
Yeah.
The largest one was the one by one, people joining, people leaving. Do you remember what the smallest one was?
No. Was it the splitting one?
I don't know.
No.
Like they seemed to, it was kind of hard
But
to tell. I
yeah,
was
it was
maybe,
similar.
I was wondering, are all the patterns going to show up? And they do. The more I do this, the more that, I did it in New Zealand, they all showed up. And so it's a natural phenomenon.
All right, so let's live with this natural phenomena. For
Yeah.
now, thank you very much
Yeah, my
for coming
pleasure.
here, for speaking. Was a pleasure, and
Yeah.
hope we'll have a chance to see you sometime in the future
Yeah.
once again.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.